Little interlude we had as we've been discussing and talking with the great conversion experience in our first segment of Larry Wright and how he met his lovely bride, now of 54 years, Miss Donna Wright, and they are missionaries extraordinaire. And they had a fascinating story of conversion, but it doesn't stop there. And this is the good part. The first 15 minutes was about how God deals and brings people in. I want you to know something, listeners. There's hope. No matter how bad you think your kid may be, Larry's a living testimony. He had a praying mama, he had a praying daddy, and they prayed him back into the family, and he became a world renowned evangelist. And he's based right out here in Charlotte. Now he's in Hickory, North Carolina. And so, Larry, pick up where we left off. You're 17 years old. God now has got your heart. You've got a beautiful bride, Miss Donna, with you, and you come back to Charlotte and tell us what God does and how you eventually ended up in Nicaragua.
Well, by the time I was 18 years old, I was running revivals and churches over the Carolinas, and then I purchased a tent, and I just had this strong feeling. I loved the what we call the tent ministry, you know.
Right.
And we'd travel around in the tent, and we had people that would help us put it up, and it was just an experience to be able to stand up and start with nobody. You know, sometimes we'd go into a city and we'd do a little bit of advertising in the paper, but
Right.
we sometimes we didn't know anybody. We'd start off with 10, 12 people.
Now, what years was this, Larry? When you
this was back in the late 69 and 70s,
okay.
you know.
So I was still a kid. So 60s, 70s, and 80s, you were in tent ministry.
Yeah, and sometimes that it would be like we'd have 7 people.
Right.
The next night we would have 10. The next night, and then sometimes it would build into something big, and sometimes it wouldn't.
Right.
Sometimes we would be there for 2 weeks, and we would never get over 60 people.
Oh.
But oftentimes we would come in there and start with 6, 7 people, and the tent would be running over people by the end of the 2 weeks that we would stay there.
And you saw miracles, and you saw healings, and you saw people getting saved, and
yes, definitely. And to give an example, there was my house caught on fire back years and years ago.
Right.
And so we lost just about everything we had in the house fire.
Mm-hmm.
And I took the next day, I took Donna out to eat over to a little restaurant in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we were sitting there waiting for them to call us. And this young, sophisticated woman had sat down beside of us there, and me and Donna were sitting there talking, and she looked over at me, and she says, "You're the preacher."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, I am a preacher."
Right.
She said, "But you don't understand. Now, we got to remember, my house had just burned down.
Right.
Me and Donna sitting there talking, going out to eat to make us feel a little better. And she said, "You're the preacher."
Okay.
And I said, "Well, I am a preacher." She said, "But you don't understand." She said, "I was in your meeting in Belmont, North Carolina. I was deaf, and God healed me."
Ooh, hallelujah.
And be frankly honest with you, I didn't recognize the woman. Don't remember.
Amen.
Because sometimes we'd have prayer lines. There'd be 152, 300 people in the line.
Yeah.
And, you know, we just believe what God says. Lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover.
Okay.
And so sometimes we wouldn't even know what happened. We just done, what God said for us to do. And so that was an encouragement there. And each time that I'd get in a low valley, it seems like God comes back and encourages me.
And just reminds you that all your work is not in vain in the Lord. And
exactly. And, eventually I went out of the tent ministry and started going into Nicaragua. Actually, started going into Cuba first.
Okay, so you went from
going
being
down there.
an itinerant tent. You went from being a tent minister. The Lord called you into mission work, international mission, and you went to Cuba when people weren't allowed to go to Cuba.
Well, that's true. We'd go through Nicaragua because they would allow us to come through there, and they wouldn't, do the paperwork and stuff. So, people would really not even know you were down there.
So you were doing some undercover work for Jesus, and you're going into Cuba.
Yeah, there you go.
And God was winning people to Christ in Cuba through your ministry.
Oh, yeah. I was, actually, I'll give you a little story. You've never heard this story before. I was preaching in a church in Cuba. And it was so full, the people were standing around the windows and at the back door and everything. But the preacher told me, he said, "Now you can pray for people, but you can't lay hands on anybody."
Oh, wow.
He said that we can't allow you to lay hands on anybody, but you can actually pray a prayer for people.
Right.
And I had another young man, man with me, another preacher from Dallas, North Carolina, actually.
Okay.
And so he was standing on the platform with me, and I preached on that night, Peter's God.
Hmm.
And I was talking about Peter. People had so much confidence in Peter's God that when Peter walked by, they said, if I can just get in his shadow,
That's right.
I know I'll be healed.
That's right.
And so I preached a little while on Peter's God. And then I had this man, I said, now he's going to walk down through the aisle, because they'd already told me you can't lay hands on anybody.
Right.
And so I said, I'm going to have him walk down this aisle. As he walks down, you imagine that Peter's God is here.
Amen.
And this young evangelist, Bobby's God is here. Larry's God is here.
Right.
And, that was the thing. And as he began to walk down, people began to screaming, and they began to holler. I mean, you sound like you was in a wild, some kind of wild church or something.
Right.
But growth was leaving people's body. People were getting healed as he walked down the aisle.
Amen.
And they followed us outside the church, because we knew we needed probably to get out of there, because we promised the man we wouldn't lay hands on anybody.
Right.
And we walked on out, got out the door, and they followed us on the outside, and many of them wanted us to lay hands on them, and we did lay hands on some on the outside of the church.
Outside the church, in obedience.
And people all over, people in Havana,
right.
Cuba, were laying on the ground, passed out on the anointing of God.
Amen.
Just because somebody decided to obey God, somebody allowed God's Spirit to move, and that's been, I guess, the thing that I always wanted in my life. God, let me be a part of what you're doing.
Amen. And Larry, you are a part of that.
Part of what you're doing.
And I hate to interrupt. Unfortunately, we only have 30 minutes, and we're about 10 minutes away from our deadline. And I want to tell people now. So Larry had this awesome anointing. It still has this awesome anointing. He's been my friend now for many years. And as God led you from Cuba with your beautiful bride, y'all went to Nicaragua. You saw the need in Nicaragua, and you bought a compound there from the former president of Nicaragua, 76 acres. And you're doing a mighty work with the people of Nicaragua. The second poorest nation in the Western Hemisphere is Nicaragua. People live off of $30 a month. Can you imagine that? $1 a day. And the unemployment's 70-something%. Kids are starving. And you and Donna see the need. And let's let Donna talk a little bit. Miss Donna, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, you've got an amazing apostle prophet there beside you, and we're so happy that you are following him to the ends of the earth. You're with him in Cuba when all this is going on, I guess, and now he's in Nicaragua.
Yeah, actually, I wasn't in Cuba, but I did go to Nicaragua.
Okay.
And we just fell in love with the people and the there. So God began dealing with us, and we actually moved there.
Okay.
And this was like 16 years ago. We had been working there for 6 years before we actually moved there.
Okay.
And we really didn't go to do what we're doing. It all just kind of evolved.
Right.
And that one thing is that anybody that's planning on doing a work for God, for the ministry, God prepares you.
Amen.
Because if somebody a year before I moved there told me that I'd be living in Nicaragua, I wouldn't have believed them.
Right.
And if that we were doing or would be doing what we're doing now, I wouldn't have believed that either.
Right.
And because we didn't go with the intentions of doing what we're doing. And I like to say we're a little mission doing great things for God.
Amen.
Because I see so many things that God does through our ministry in Nicaragua, and for the children and for these young people that are getting an education, and we're seeing fruits of our labor when we see them get a job and break that cycle of poverty.
Right.
But God leads us there, and I kind of got the cart before the horse. But in the beginning, we just started out, Larry preaching and many different churches and thousands of people coming out, and God doing miracles there as well. And then we looked around one day and we said, man, where we were at, we had so much ministry with the children.
Right.
So we began right there at the mission was our very first feeding program. And but we don't do just the feeding program. We do a Bible study, right, or a children's service with the children
every day.
That's required every day with all the churches that we work with, that we supply the food for them to do the feeding programs. We do service or Bible study for the children, and so they hear the gospel of Christ.
So they started out with just a few. You started out feeding just a few there at the mission, and now how many do you feed every day?
We feed about 15,000 children.
15,000 children a day, and
this is through 80 different churches.
80 different churches you cooperate with, and we all come together, buy the food, and you guys serve as the distribution center, and 15,000 kids stand in line,
right.
get a meal and a Bible discussion. And then you were led to start a Christian school. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I had been working with the little school that was in our community, which wasn't enough.
Right.
The kids weren't going to school. You'd see them out on the road all the time, and my heart just grieved because I was thinking, all these children need to be in school.
Yes, amen.
Break this cycle of poverty if we don't educate them.
Correct.
And so they had a one-room schoolhouse with one teacher for all the grades, and I probably would have just worked with the public school if we could have.
Right.
But it wasn't sufficient, so we started a school, Christian school.
Right.
They have chapel every single day.
Every day.
And when we first started, we started with kindergarten and 1 through 6.
Okay.
And I thought maybe we would have 75 kids, and we opened with 187 kids.
Wow.
And so it just kept growing and growing, and every year after the first 6th grade graduation, we added the high school, which goes from 7 to 11 there.
Right.
And so we added a grade till we had a complete high school. And now we've actually have seen our high school graduates go through college, been able to help some of them.
Amen.
And we got one of our teachers was in our first high school graduating class, and he's teaching at our school, a great teacher.
So that's the great fruits that God's given to
has
you.
A heart, and these kids are being raised like they go to chapel every morning. They are being raised in church. They
Amen.
are being taught how to have leadership qualities like
you're really
leading,
making
singing.
a difference, Miss Donna. I hate to, folks. You see how excited I am about the Wright's mission and how excited they are after all these years. They're still planting seeds and winning people to Christ. We got 3 minutes left. Donna, I know that what I want to do today is tell the folks that's listening and watching, this is not a foundation that's endowed with millions of dollars. They need help. They've given every dime of their lives. They've sold all their property through the years, and now they're in their 70s. It's time for the church to rise up and help them. Tell us, Donna, how we can support a child. You have a Support a Child program. It's $30 a month, and we can take care of the food, the education, and medical needs of a child in Nicaragua.
Of a child.
And,
that's right.
And it's $30, and we can do that by going to WMOC, www.wmoc.org, O-R-G. Again, that's www.WMOC, World Mission Outreach Center.org. And you can go on there and you can actually pick a child, and that child will write you. And it's not some fake stuff. These are real people doing a real work, and you'll get a letter from a real child, and you can help support this awesome work in Nicaragua. Our church does it. This is my main ministry. This is why I'm on the air. We're here to try to help support this work of World Mission Outreach Center, and just WMOC.org. I wish I had more time. I don't. We're out of time today. But listen, go on our Roku channel and look at this video. Re-listen to this broadcast. We're going to have the Wrights on several more times, and we're probably going to do an extensive video collection with this. But I want you to support World Mission Outreach Center, WMOC.org. $30 can change a life forever. Larry and Donna, thank y'all for being on the show with us today. I'll have you back. You're my friends. I love you. Love Lisa and your granddaughter, and we'll get back with you soon. But this is Dr. J saying thank you for joining us on the Dr. J Today Show. We'll be back next week at the same time. Please join us. And until then, go make a difference around the corner, around the globe. God bless.
God bless.